What's up guys, in this video we'll build a complete CRUD API using Golang, and we'll have something called as a movie server which will give us the list of all movies, and we can create, update and delete as well. That's what CRUD stands for. And this diagram is a 10,000 feet view of what we'll be building, so that once we start coding you won't have any confusions, right, of why we're doing certain things. So there won't be a database. That's why I've put a big cross here, that we are not going to use a database. We'll instead use structs and slices to actually perform operations on the data inside the server itself. And we'll be serving it on localhost 8000. We'll be using Gorilla Mux, and Gorilla Mux is an external library, so I'll show you how to install it as well. And so we'll have 5 different routes. So we'll have a get all route, we'll have a get by ID route, create route, update route, and delete route. And that's something you need to remember, because once we start coding, you'll understand why I have shown you this diagram. So every single route will have a corresponding function. So if it's a get all route, it'll have a get movies function. If it's a get by ID, then you'll have a get movie function without the S. And then if it's a create route, it'll have a create movie function, and so on for update and delete as well, right? Now there are 2 types of endpoints, /movies or /movies by ID, and we have to use them depending on what we're doing. In the sense, if we're creating, then obviously it's /movies. If you're updating, then obviously the ID is required, so it has to be /movies/ID, right? Then there are methods. So there are get methods for get all and get by ID. We'll use get method. For create, we'll use post. For update, we'll use put, and for delete, we'll use the delete method. And we'll be using postman to test all these endpoints using all these methods, right? So what we'll start doing now is we'll start first, we'll create a directory for keeping this project, and then we'll start writing the code, and then I'll take you to Postman to test all the APIs. So the prerequisite here is that you need to have Golang installed on your system. Now I'll see you on the PowerShell. So now we are at our PowerShell. For Windows we have PowerShell. For Ubuntu or Mac you'll have your terminal. Is the same thing, and the commands that I'll be writing here will be exactly the same for Mac and Ubuntu as well, so you don't have to worry. Now the prerequisite, like I said, is that you should have Golang installed in your server, on your system, I meant, and that means that you'll have a folder called as Go in your system, right? So you have to go inside the Go folder, you have to go inside SRC. If you don't have SRC, then you can create SRC, but you'll definitely have bin and package, I think. So you can create the SRC folder, and now you're inside the SRC folder, right, as you can see here. Now we'll create a directory called Go Movies CRUD, and we're going to cd inside this directory, right? And like I had mentioned in the beginning of the video, that we'll be using Gorilla Mux. Now Gorilla Mux is not part of the main package that you get with Golang, right? So it's an external package. So the way to install that is using go get, and you have to put the github.com link for the same, right? So the link for Gorilla is gorilla/mux, and then github.com/gorilla/mux, and then you use go get to get it. And then once I hit enter, it's going to install it in my Go Movies CRUD folder. Now I'll open up my code editor window. You could use Notepad++. I'm using VS Code in this video, so I'm going to open up this folder in Code Plus in VS Code, like I said, and I'm going to try and shift to the Visual Studio Code. So I think now you can see VS Code on your screen as well. And here we'll create a file called main.go. Now this video is a beginner friendly video, so I'm not going to have different folders and a very complex project structure which will have routes and controllers and models and database and all of those files and folders, because that will I'll have to configure the Go path, I'll have to configure the relative routing and all of those things. So I don't want you to be confused if you're a beginner. So if you've just learned Golang and you just want to get your hands dirty with building a server and building a REST API, this is the right video for you. So I'm going to try and write everything in the main.go file, right? So that you don't get confused. And this is also why I'm also not using a database, and I'm using just structs and slices to actually manipulate the data inside Golang itself. And so let's get started. So as you know, that when we write the main.go file, the first thing that we have to write is the package main, right? So, and then we start importing the packages that we need. So I know that I'll be using fmt because I'm going to be printing out stuff like your server is connected and that kind of stuff. I know that I'll be using log because I want to log out the errors if there's any error for connecting to the server. and then I'll be using encoding / JSON. By the way, all these are part of the package main, so you don't have to really worry. So encoding / JSON, I need this because I want to encode my data into JSON when I send it to Postman. And then I need math / random. We'll be creating so let's say the user adds a new movie to this movie server, so we need to create a new ID for it, and that will be created using math/random. So that's why I need that. And then I obviously need net /HTTP, because this allows us to create a server in Golang, so it's quite important, obviously. And then you have your string conversion, because the ID that I'll create using math.random will be an integer, and then I'll have to convert it into a string. So I'll use string convert, and I'll use itoa to format the integer, and then convert into string. So, and then I'll have the external library that we just installed, which is Gorilla Mux. So you'll say github.com and /gorilla/mux. Now you'll get a squiggly line for all these packages because you have imported them, but you're not using them. So Golang knows that, and Golang is going to trouble you till the time you start using those packages, and which will be quite soon for us. So we'll start using them soon. Now, if you remember, I told you that we won't be using a database. We'll be using structs and slices, right? Struct is basically like an object in JavaScript. If you've used JavaScript or Java or any other language, it's like an object, and you're going to define. You're going to have almost like key value pairs, and you're going to define the types of data inside that. So I'm going to have a struct of type movie, and I'm going to have a struct of type director. Okay, and movies and directors are going to be associated in the sense that every movie has a director. That's how they're going to be associated. So movie will have multiple other things. It'll have an ID, which will be string, right? And then you put this character, which is I think called caret. I'm not sure. This is directly below the escape button on your keyboard. And then you say JSON, and then you say ID within double quotes. And then you have ISBN, which is basically just a number assigned, a unique ID assigned to a film. And then you have again those caret characters, and then you have JSON and ISBN. Just write struct here, then this squiggly line would hopefully go away. Yeah. And then you would have the title of the movie. Obviously the movie has a title, right? And you'll put string here, and then you put a JSON, and then you'll say it's title. Then you have to say director, star, director, and JSON, director. And star is a pointer, as you know. So that means if I create a struct called director, it will be associated to movie struct. And with director, what I'm saying is that director will have the same values that I'll define inside the director, right? So these are strings, ID, ISBN, and title are strings, but director is a type of director, which is a struct that I've defined, which I'm defining right now. And director will have first name, which will be a string, JSON, and first name, and it'll have a last name, which will again be JSON, last name, right? So when we send this data using Postman, we'll be using ISBN, ID, title, and director in small, with small, what do you call it, small caps. Same with first name and last name. That's why we're defining JSON like this, so that we're able to encode and decode the JSON when it comes from Postman. And so we've defined our two structs, and like I said, movies are associated to directors, right? Every movie has one director. And then we'll have our, so we'll define a variable called movies. It will be a slice of the type movie, this, right? So because we'll be using movies very often now, you'll see why. I won't try to explain it, I'll just show you instead. So we, as you know, every Golang code, every Go file has func main, right? In func main, you will have your in Golang, I'm sure you know that you have colon is equal to, which declares and defines a variable at the same time. So you'll have mux dot new router. New router is a function inside the mux library inside Gorilla. So R is now your new router. And then you'll have R dot handle func, and you'll have 5 functions here. So let me take you back to the Chrome and show you those 5 functions. So we'll have 5 routes, as you remember, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we'll have 5 different functions, right? So inside our func main file itself, func main function itself, we'll have to define these routes and the functions. So let's go back to the code window. I'm not sure if you can see it. Yeah, so now you can see it. So I'm back at the code window, and now I need to create 5 different routes and 5 different functions, right? So first route is the movies route. I'll get movies. Get movies will be the function. So if I hit the /movies route, I'll need to take it to the get movies function, which I'll define in some time. Till the time I don't define it, it's going to give me a squiggly line and say that you don't have this function. And the method I'll be using here is get. You've seen this on the diagram that I'll be using get method for getting all the movies, right? Then you'll have r.handle func /movies /id and get movie. So as you can see, there's no s here, it's get movie, get a singular movie. And methods again is get. Then you have a r.handle func /movies create movie, and methods is post. Then you have r.handle. I'm not copying and pasting r.handle func this line. I'm typing it again and again because I want you to type as well, and that will ensure that you have some muscle memory, and then you'll be able to write code on the fly really quickly, and you won't make a lot of mistakes. So it's always good to write it again from scratch. So we'll have a function here called update movie. Then you will have methods, and we'll say put, and we'll say r.handle func /movies /id again. And we have delete movie dot methods delete. Okay, so we have the functions, we have the methods, and we have the routes. So all of that makes sense. And to start the server, what we'll say is, so first we'll have to print starting server at port 8000 /n, right? And I'm going to say, I'm going to log out if the server doesn't start, and I'm going to put I'm going to use the listen and serve function inside the HTTP package that I have here, HTTP package. So to start a server is very simple in Golang, right? All you have to do is HTTP dot listen and serve. That's all you have to do. And you have to write the name of the port. So I have to put this colon in front of it because localhost colon 8000, right? We'll be hitting that address when you start the server. So I have these 5 functions, get movies, get movie. So I have to create all those 5 functions, and I have the method set out here. Now before I do any of that, when we go to our postman and when we'll hit the server, right, when we'll hit the API /movies, and we want to get all the movies, in the beginning there won't be any movies. So that we don't want that. We want it to have at least a couple of movies, right? So that we know that the server, the API is working perfectly. Otherwise we'll never come to know. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take movies struct, this slice of movies, right, that I just created here. That's what I was saying, that I'm going to show it to you very soon, so you don't have to worry about it. So we have the slice called movies, and I'm going to append a couple of movies to it. And by the way, all the operations that we'll be doing in all these 5 functions will be around this slice called movies, because we'll be storing a lot of these different movies. And the type obviously is this. This is an entire type, right? Or you can call it a class or an object or whatever. This is an entire type, and then we'll have multiple movies of this type, the complete struct type, right? And then you have movies append, and then you have movies, right? Because we want to append to movies, and we want to append a movie to movies, right? Which will be an object, just like this. It'll be an object, a struct, and we'll have to define all these things like ID, ISBN, title, and all of those things. So I'll say ID 1, I'll say ISBN 438-227. Let's say title movie 1. And for director, the syntax is slightly different. Okay. So you'll say director, and then you'll say ampersand director, because we want the reference object, we want the reference of the address of director, right, which is this out here. That's how we'll be able to use the pointer director. So if you've used pointers in C or any other language, you'll just know that ampersand is to give you the address, and percentage or so the asterisk is used to access that address or the pointer. And then you have the director, which is first name John and last name Doe. So I have one movie, I'll create another movie, append movies, movie object, and it will have an ID. Just a second, there seems to be some issue. Yeah, so it will be an ID to ISBN 45425, and then I have a title movie 2. Then you have your director again, director, first name. So what should be good first name and last name? Let's keep it Steven Smith. Steve, and last name is Smith. I'll actually keep the S capital, even with, yeah, Steve S is capital, I think. Yeah. So like I said, we have our movies. So when we now hit the get movies function, at least we'll have 2 movies that will show up, right? So we'll at least know if the API is working and the server is working fine. And now let's start creating our get all movies function. So what I'll do is I'll create the get all movies function, then I'll create the delete function, and then I'll create the get movie function, create function, and update function. Because update function is will look a little complicated to you. It will be the most intimidating, so I want to tackle it at last, so that you at least get used to the syntax before that. So let's create get movies. Okay, w http dot response writer, comma r star http dot request. So we are passing a pointer of the request that you will send from your postman to this function, and w is the response writer. So when we send a response from this function, it will be w, right? So we'll say w dot header dot set. Basically, we want to set the content type as JSON, right? So we want to work with JSON. The thing is that the struct our Golang struct needs to be able to convert the JSON coming into its own format. So that's why we have to set this content type, and then we'll say application/JSON, and then we'll say JSON.new encoder, which we got from here, encoding/JSON, right? JSON. This is the same JSON.new encoder, and you're going to encode W, basically the response that you want to send to it. You want to encode it into JSON, and .encode, and you want to pass the complete movies slice that you have. So like I said, whenever we create slices, we're just going to append a new movie to the movie slice that already exists. Whenever we want to update anything, we'll be traversing inside movies, and we'll be updating something inside the movies slice as well. So movie slice is quite central, and when we return the list of all movies, we'll be returning or resolving basically the entire movie slices at the same time. So this is why the movies slice is at the center of this entire operation that we're doing right now. So you've seen how, now you know how you can get all movies, right? So you basically want to encode it into JSON, and then you want to just encode movies and send the JSON of all the movies of the slice, which has the type struct, which is struct movie, right? So all of these movies you will be able to send to the front end or to Postman or wherever. Now we'll create the delete function, because that also looks a little easy, right? And then we'll get into get one and create and delete functions. So let's delete a movie. Now when you want to delete a movie, you'll be passing an ID of the movie. So we'll say w http.response writer again, and r star http.request. You'll have w.header.set, again the same thing, content type, and you want it to be application/JSON. And now I'll get some params, right? So the ID that I'll pass from my Postman, which will go as a param to this function, delete movie. And that param, which will be the ID, will be present inside mux.vars and inside the response, the request, which is R. So it will be part of the request, right? The pointer to the request that I'm sending out here. So in params, now I'll be able to access the ID. So what I'll do is I'll range over movies. Ranging over movies, if you've used JavaScript, it's very similar to like for each basically. So all you're doing is you're just going over all of the movies, and you want to find a particular movie. And now what you want to do is if item.id, or the ID that you pass. So you'll say that delete the ID 2, in the sense the movie with the ID 2, right? So the ID which you now have access to, which will be params ID. So you know that we got params, we got the ID that you sent as a request to this function, will be inside params and will be inside ID. So you'll have access to that particular movie, that particular ID, I mean. And inside movies, you'll go through all the movies one by one, and each of the movie will be inside items. So with item.id, you'll be able to access each of the IDs of the movies, of each of the movies, right? So if the item.id of a movie which is inside our movie slice is equal to the ID that you just passed as a params to the request, then what should we do? We should take the movie slice and we should append. Basically we want to delete it, right? So we're appending it. I'll show you how you can delete something by using append. So we'll say movies and index. So for a range function, right, you have to pass index and item. Index is like, I is equal to 1. Well, this is very much like JavaScript, like so for index you have I, so I starts from 0 and goes till a particular value, and item is actually the item. So if you used a for in loop or a for off loop, you would know that you can access or iterate over the exact items itself. And in Golang, you can do both at the same time. And you will have movies index +1 and ... So what you're doing here essentially is whatever ID that's matching right now that you want to delete, it's going to basically take that and directly append all of the other data, which is basically index +1. All of the other data is going to just append it in that place, in this place. So that means this movie now won't exist. So the ID that you just passed with the index, it won't exist, because in place of that, the entire movies index +1, after that all the movies that were there, they came out here, right, in this place. So the movies that you want to delete now will not exist. So that's how you delete a movie, right, using append. Now we'll get a particular movie by using get movie function. So we'll create the get movie function. And again, we'll have w/http dot response writer. We'll have r star http dot request. We'll w dot header dot set. And again, your content type, comma, application / JSON. Then just the same way we did with delete movie, you will get params, the ID in the params, right? In the same place exactly, where R is the request that the user sends, and mux is the package that we're using for creating these routes, and vars is inside mux, right, which helps us to get access to all the things in requests, so basically the params. And then we'll loop through the movies one by one. So if I want to get a particular movie from the slice of the movies that exist with me in Golang, all I have to do is I have to go through all the movies and then find that one, and then encode into JSON and send it to the front end or to Postman, right? So here we'll again use the for loop, just like we did in delete movies, but there'll be a difference here. Instead of index, we'll write the blank identifier, because we don't want to use index, because we won't be using index, right? And if you don't use something in Golang, you have to use the blank identifier, otherwise Golang will give you those squiggly lines and give you an error that you have defined this variable but you have not used it, right? So that's why we have to use this blank identifier. Now we'll range over the movies, and we'll say if item.id is equal to params id, right? So inside params I have passed an id, so it's going to try and compare that with item.id, because it's going to range over all the movies one by one, and each movie will be inside item, and so we'll have the access of id inside the item, and that will compare with params.id that we just passed. And if they're equal, then you just have to return it. That's all you need to do. You don't have to do any other operation. So you'll say new encoder w dot encode item, and then you'll just return. Now I'm sure now you can see why I showed you the delete function before the get movie function, right? And that's because in delete function we used the range, but we didn't have a blank identifier. If I would have used a blank identifier directly, then you would have gotten confused. So that's why I wanted to show you the delete function before. Now in delete movie, once we delete the movie, I think it's better to also return all the existing movies after you've deleted that movie. So what I'll do is I'll try and return the remaining movies as well. So I'll say new encoder w dot encode movies, just like I did in get movies, right? JSON.new encoder w dot encode movies, right? And in get movie, we're just sending one particular movie, which will be the item. As you know that with range you can access each movie using the item, right? So we're just sending back one movie. Whereas with delete movies, we're sending back all the remaining movies. With get movies, we are sending back all the movies. So get, delete, get movie, I'm sure these are clear now. Now we'll take a look at create movie. So we'll create movie, which obviously is the most important function because you want to create movies. It's going to be a post method, response writer, and r star http dot request. The spelling of response is wrong, so it's giving me a squiggly line, so I'll say response. It's best to keep looking at the squiggly line so that you can handle all the errors while writing the code itself. So now you can see that none of the functions have a squiggly line anymore except update movie, because you have not defined it yet. So that's why there's a squiggly line there. And we have used all of the packages as well. So the squiggly lines have gone except math random and string convert that we'll be using in update movie. And update movie is obviously the most intimidating function, so I have not shown it to you yet. And that's why we'll look at the last. And now we have create movie header dot set. This is something that we do every single time, right? Content type comma application slash JSON. Then we'll define a variable called movie of type movie, and you'll soon see why. And we'll create a blank identifier again. We'll decode r.body. So while creating a movie, we'll send something in the body. We'll send an entire movie like this, We'll send it in the body in Postman. So we want to now decode that body, right? We want to decode that JSON body, and we'll say decode and movie, right? So we'll get that value here in this and movie, right? After decoding it, I will say movie.id. So this is where we'll use your string convert and your math.random, because we want to create a new movie now, right? So to create a new movie, we also need to create a new ID, which will be completely random ID. So what we'll do is we'll say random.int n, which is a function inside random math random library package, and we'll say 1 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8. You can put as many zeros as you want. So I want to value between 1 and this maximum value to create a random value, right? And then I'll have to now format it into string. So I'll say string convert dot itoa, which is a function inside string convert package, and that's how I'll get a new movie ID. So I'll say movies is equal to append. Like we saw how with delete movies you could append, right? And now with create movie also you want to append, just like we did when we created a new movie. We want to append the new movie that has just come to movies. That's all we want to do. So it's very simple. So we'll say append, and we'll say movies comma movie, because the new movie that has come from the body is now inside this movie, which we decoded from JSON into now a format that is readable by Golang, and it will now look like this. It will look like a struct, right? So that like we said, movies comma and the entire movie. So that's what we're doing here. Essentially we're just saying movies and comma movie that we just received from the body that the user just sent from their Postman, and now which has been converted into a format readable by Golang, right? So really simple. Now since we have appended it here, now we want to also return this movie that was just created, just to tell the user that, hey, I have created this movie, so you don't have to worry. So we'll say encode and movie. So the movie is now created. Now comes the most intimidating function, which is update movie function. I'll start writing it out. Update movie, and here we'll be passing an ID, right? So you know how to get the ID, right? You'll get it in params, which will be inside mux.vars and inside r, right? The params will be there, and then we'll have to again range over all the movies. And then what we'll be doing for updating movies is we'll first delete that movie for the ID that you'll send, and then we'll just simply add the new ID that the new movie that we'll be sending from Postman. So this is not obviously the right way to do things when you work with databases, but we're just doing it here. Since we're not using a database, we can get away with that. We'll just delete the ID of the movie, that the movie with the ID that you send from Postman, and then we'll just add the new movie that you'll send, the new struct you'll send in that same place. We'll add it there. So I hope that makes sense. Or maybe should I just write some pseudocode and so that it becomes really clear to you. So first what we'll do is we'll set our JSON content type, which we always do, right? And then the next step will be that we'll get access to our params. Then we'll loop over the movies, or we'll range over them, range over the movies. Then what we'll do is we'll delete the movie of the ID, with the ID that we have sent. So first we'll delete it, and then we'll simply add a new movie, which will be the movie that we sent in the body, Postman. So instead of actually updating that particular record in a database, we're just deleting it and then just adding a new record from the body that you're sending, which is a nice little hack and something that you shouldn't do when you work with actual databases, right? It's just to show you right now. So this is the pseudocode. One by one, let's start writing our code then, right? So now we want to set JSON content type. How do we do that? We do that by w header dot set content type with T is capital, and we will say comma application slash JSON, and then we want our params, right? So to get params, we'll say params is equal to max dot where's are. We have been doing this till now. Now we're going to loop over the movies, and we're going to delete the movie, and then we'll add a new movie. So we'll do all of those three things now at the same time. So we'll say for index. Now we want to use index in this case, so we won't use this blank identifier here because we want to use index. We'll say is equal to range movies, and if item dot id is equal to params id. What should happen? So like I said, we'll delete over the movies using range, and then we'll find that movie in our movies slice, and we'll delete that particular movie with the ID that you've sent. So we found it with the ID that you've sent. Now we want to delete it. So we'll say movies is equal to append. So we'll write the exact same line that we've written in delete movies to delete it. So we'll say inside append we'll use the exact same syntax. So we'll say movies and index comma movies index +1, and let's say dot dot dot. Right, so let me see if that's what we have written earlier as well. Yeah, there were no mistakes earlier, so it's the same thing. Now we'll say where movie of type movie. Now because we want to append that movie, so that's why we're going to try and follow the same code that we've written for create movie, and we're essentially going to we can copy and paste this whole thing, but I'm just going to write it again, right? So like I said, we're adding a new movie, the movie that we sent at the body. So we'll say is equal to JSON dot new decoder r dot body. We'll decode the body, right? And we'll keep it movie, which is this. So we'll say movie dot id is equal to params id. So the id that we have passed. So this is the only step that's different from create movie, right? Because we want to have it in the same id. We want to use the same id. So we'll say movies is equal to append movies comma movie. Let's say JSON dot new encoder w dot encode movie, because we want to return the movie to the user to tell him that, hey, I've done what you wanted me to do. I'll remove these comments since now you already know how this is supposed to work. Now, one thing that we have not done inside update movie is w http dot response writer comma r star http dot request. Right, so all looks good now. All we have to do now, I think, is write return here, and then we're good to go. I don't think there are any issues or errors here, so I can go ahead and compile this code maybe. Right, so let me take you back to the PowerShell. How do I? Yeah, so I'm back in the PowerShell now. So I'm still inside that folder, Go Movies CRUD, and as you can see, I have that main.go file. So all I have to do now is go build. I've built it, and now we have to say go run main.go. It's going to now start the server, and it's going to ask me for firewall access. Maybe you don't see it in your screen because it's a pop-up, so I'll say allow access. So yeah, so now it's running on server 8000. Now let's go head over to our Postman. So let me see if I can do that, or I'll have to maybe pause the video and then show you Postman. Yeah, I can show you Postman. Yes, I think you can see it now. I'm using OBS, so it's difficult to switch between tabs actually in OBS screen recorder. Now I have created this folder called rough just for my own use. You can probably create just a new folder, and inside this I'm going to create a new folder called Go Movies. Inside Go Movies, I'll have a request. The request will be get all. Then I'll have a new request, get by ID. I'll have a new request again. It'll be I think it'll be create, then update and delete. So for get all you have to do is http/localhost/movies, right? So you have to write http://localhost:8000/movies. That's what you have to write. And let's hit the server, and voila, the server is working. We have got our 2 movies that we created in our VS Code, right? Because we didn't want this to be empty, so we had created 2 movies using append and in our func main. So these are those 2 movies. Let's get a movie by ID. So I'm going to take the same route here. I'm going to put /1 because I want just the first movie, so I'll get just the first movie, as you can see. Right, now I want to create a movie. To create a movie, I'll just say I won't give the ID obviously, because Golang will create the ID on its own. And I'll go here and say I'll body, and I'll say raw, and I'll say JSON. And now write. I'll just copy paste this one little from my get all. I'll copy and paste one movie here in the body. I'll change the ID. I'll say 7. I'll change the number to something else. I'll say movie 7, and I'll probably delete a couple. And the name here, I'll say Sharma. So it has added that movie called 7, but it's not sending me that movie 7. It should have sent me that movie 7 here. So there's something wrong. We'll have to, oh sorry, I'm still on get. So remember to switch to post method here, right? So when you say send, it gives you the movie that you just created, which is this movie 7, right? And ID, there's no point of sending ID because ID, as we know, it's going to create on its own. So I was wrong when I did that. So even if I create one more, it's going to create one more ID with the same values. So now when I get all, I'll see 4 different values, right? Now let's try and edit one of these. So let's update. First, let me just copy this whole thing here. and switch this to put, and then we'll put the ID of one of the movies here. Let's put this ID here and update, right? And then we'll have to send something in the body, which will be the new movie. The new movie can be copied from here, and we can change some of the values, like we'll put it Arnold, and I'll just say S because I can't spell Shotmaker. And I'll say something else here, ISBN. And so let's see what happens. So yeah, the movie has been updated. The movie 7 had first name Akhil Sharma, and now it just has Arnold S. So even if we get all, we'll be able to see that the movie 7 has so there's one movie with Akhil Sharma, but there's one movie with Arnold S because we had created 2 right in the beginning. Now let's try to delete this. So I'm going to first copy this thing and put it in delete, and then I'll put the ID. I'll go back here, I'll get the ID from here. So now it's returning me the movie that has been deleted, which was movie 7 Arnold S. So now when I get all, I won't see that movie, hopefully. I'm still seeing that movie, actually. Why is delete not working? Oh, sorry, it's on get. Again, I made the same mistake. So I have to use the method delete for it. So don't make the same mistakes that I'm making, all right? So now there are only 3 movies. So it's returned me all the movies that are now left, right? So there are only 3 movies left. Even if I say get all, there are only 3 movies left. Let's delete one more. Let's delete this one also, so that only 2 movies will be left. So yeah, only 2 movies are left now, right? So remember to change the method when you're using Postman. I hope you liked this video. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you have any doubts or questions, you can put them in the comments below. If you have any errors while writing your code, do put them in the comments below. And if you like this video, then do subscribe. I'll be making way more advanced videos than this. And if you want me to share this code with you, you can let me know. But I usually don't recommend that. I recommend you type it on your own completely. But if you want me to share it, just put it in the comments and I'll share the code with you. And thanks a lot for watching, and see you in the next episode.